May 26, 1979, Colusa, California. So the breakdown on this sighting is it was 11:30 p.m., really late at night. Primary eyewitness is watching television. He's got the air conditioning on, and all of a sudden the TV goes out. Coincidentally, the air conditioning goes out. So he gets out of the couch and he goes to the circuit breaker in the back of the house, checking to see if anything popped. That seemed to be okay. But immediately he noticed, as soon as he walked to the back of the house, all of the hair on his arms and on his chest and on his hair started standing upright and then also crackling and snapping. So there was this static electrical field where he was at. He looked up and saw a 140-foot diameter dish-shaped craft. On the top upper section, there was a dome that looked like a lemon squeezer or an orange juice squeezer. It had these ribs on it, which we don't hear about too much. On the bottom of this craft, there were 6 conduit pipes that had frayed edges, and then on either side of those, there were these 2 prong devices. Now, off to the left, he noticed 2 smaller craft that were half the diameter of the large one, and they were sucking power off the 500,000 volt power lines, causing them to become cherry red. So right there, it's a CE2 case because it had physical effects. Now, while all this is going on, this is about a 2-minute sighting here, these conduit pipes retracted into the bottom of the craft. At that time, simultaneously, these hook devices retracted 90% into the bottom of the craft, and then a door opened on either side of the outer circumference of the craft, and these gooseneck lights popped out, shining lights below. So that was kind of the first scene. At that point, the primary witness really started to panic. So he went back inside. Here you can see a drawing of what this craft actually looks like. You can see the rib dome here. You can see these conduit pipes and the frayed edges and these claw-like devices as well. So he goes into his house. He wakes up his wife. He wakes up his 2 children. They go to the back room. They open up the window. They pull the blinds across, and they can see that large craft flanked on either side by the 2 smaller craft. They're also pulling power off the 500,000 volt power lines. And then, ladies and gentlemen, something very interesting happened. The large craft, what you see here in the center, and if you look closely here, you can see these rolling hills in the background that are about 24 nautical miles away. The center craft went from a dead standstill, hovered over the hills in the background, and they did it in less than 1 second, and then came back in less than 1 second and made no sonic boom. This is like mid to late 1970s that this is going on, and they're breaking the sonic sound barrier with no sonic boom. So someone figured out how to suppress their sonic boom signature a long, long time ago. It's a done deal. They already figured it out. At this point, he said, you know what, I'm done. So he piles his family, his wife, his 2 kids into the pickup truck that go 90 miles an hour down the road trying to get away from this thing. The large 140-foot diameter dish-shaped craft follows the truck, goes off to the right side of the cab, over to the left, then back again to the right side. They finally get to the neighbor's house. They screech the brakes. They jump out of the car. They slam the door, start knocking on the neighbor's door. Neighbors come out. So you've got the 4 eyewitnesses plus 2 of the neighbors saw the just tail end of this large 140-foot diameter dish-shaped craft leave the area. So there were 6 eyewitnesses that actually saw this, and there was electromagnetic effects around the whole town area there, flickering lights. So absolutely a solid CE2 case. Stigler, Oklahoma, 1961. 2 witnesses were driving down the road. All of a sudden, they saw a dish-shaped craft hover over their vehicle. It shined this light down to the center and then lifted the car 18 inches off the road. So it's a CE2 case. And the primary eyewitness said that the speedometer on the vehicle was going 120 miles an hour, but they were standing still. This is back in 1961. Here's the original report that described the case in detail. We'll go over some of the classifications. So this is Jalen Hynek's close encounter classification. So close encounter of the first kind is a visual sighting, lights in the sky. Close encounter of the second kind Physical effects, landing traces, marks, broken branches, car engine stalling. Close encounter of the third kind is an interaction with entities, and according to Steven Spielberg, that's when we meet him. So that's the third kind, close encounter. I dug this out of the QFOS archives. It had been sitting there for like 40 years. I don't think anyone ever saw it. If I didn't dig it out, I don't think anyone still would have seen it. Now, this was seen by 3 eyewitnesses. So you've got the husband, you've got the wife, and their young daughter.
Okay.
They're looking off to the west when they thought they were seeing an airliner approach their location, because it kind of went by there at the same time frame. But in this case, they saw this orange purplish light that they thought was an engine nacelle on fire. As it got closer, this was no commercial airliner. And the husband asked his daughter to go next door and get a pair of binoculars, which she did. She came back and handed it to her father. He looked through the binocular and got a very close look at this thing. It was about 50 feet across, kind of elliptical shape. It had these cast iron exhaust ports going around the last third part of the craft itself. And then it had these very strange half dual opposing hemispherical domes with kind of a blue arcing light continuously going between these half domes. This is the actual drawing I did based on the eyewitness report. You can see these exhaust pipes, and each one of these exhaust ports was emitting this strange lasagna noodle flame, you could call it, that was orange or violet in color. Over to the left and the bottom here, you can see the location of the electrodes. So again, whatever this thing was, there were 2 of these actually seen, because it was going on its original flight path and made a 45-degree angle up and then continued on its flight path. Here's the rendering of what these domes look like with this electrical arc. This was going continuously as this thing flew by. And the witness report stated that the smoke that was emanating from the spark gap mechanism followed the craft as it moved along. It did not dissipate with the wind. It followed the craft. Here's what these lasagna noodle flames look like, violet colored flames. He said it didn't look like a flame from a campfire, but looked like the flames, they were like electrical. It was an electrical discharge. That's the way he described these. Okay, so we'll move on to May 16th, 1967, Falcon Lake, Canada. This is the famous Stephen Mikulik Falcon Lake case. This is known all around the world. It's famous within ufology. Now, Stephen was a rock hound. He was you could call him a mineral collector. And so he was looking for different rocks and things. He was wearing jeans. He was wearing leather gloves. He was wearing a thick shirt, and he was also wearing welder's goggles to protect his eyes. There were 2 of these 40-foot diameter dish-shaped craft that hovered over his location. One departed. The other one landed about 200 feet from his location, which you can see right here. It kind of had a chrome polished aluminum exterior. There was a door on sort of the right-hand side that did eventually open. And then there was another, what looked like an exhaust port with these equally spaced holes. And we'll get into that a little bit later. So he went over to this door, and it was emitting this violet-colored light. He could hear noises in some kind of a language that he couldn't determine. So you've got this 2-foot by 3-foot hatch, which he's looking in now. And then you've got this 6-inch by 8-inch vent or exhaust ports just left of this hatch. And we'll do an enlargement of him looking inside this hatch. Now, he never did see anybody. He could hear voices, but he could never figure out what the language was. Soon after that, this craft kind of lifted off about 12 inches from the soil, started rotating. And when whatever this exhaust hatch lined up with him, there was some type of a discharge, and it actually burned him severely. It caught his clothes on fire. He ended up throwing up because the effects were so severe. So it's a CE2 case. And the drill hole pattern on this hatch matched exactly the burn pattern on his chest. And I'm sure you've all seen the photos before, but that's how that occurred. and you can see the enlargement of the burn pattern with these marks on his chest, which actually match these drill hole pattern. Here's another rendering of it here, what it actually looked like. And then here you can see the burn marks on his chest. And then you can see that there was some debris found, or metal fragments, at the landing site itself. Over to the left, you can see the entry hatch, and then whatever this exhaust port here also to the left as well. Now, I've got this photograph, ladies and gentlemen, from Antonio Huneas, who's my fellow researcher. This is the official Falcon Lake landing site photo from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. And if you look really closely, you can see this darker patch is in the form of a circle. So this is the exact landing location of the famous Falcon Lake encounter. Here's a photograph of Stephen Michael. This is the Edmonton Journal, May 24th, 1967, where he has an original sketch and he described the case in great detail. Moving on, April 9th, 1972, Long Island, New York, what can only be described as a quote-unquote flying iron. So the husband actually pulled off to the side of the road. The wife got out of the passenger side. She went on to oncoming traffic and then stood over this craft as it flew by. It had white lights on the bottom and then a red light on the left-hand side, a green light on the right-hand side. And then she said that she could see on the aft end of this craft 2 poles sticking up with a wire going across. So I asked the question, is this an alien spacecraft that would have 2 poles sticking up and a wire across? Seems kind of archaic. So here's the flyover reporter from Long Island. This is International UFO Reporter, February 1973. That's the original sketch. And then I've got the actual eyewitness sketch reproduced here so you can see what they actually saw. And they also did a very lengthy audio tape interview that's about an hour in length. I've got the transcript of that, and they both were interviewed and described the same craft. So interesting.